Hi there, and welcome to Legacy Builders. I am your host, Matt Herriman. I'm so excited to dive into the stories of leadership, community building, and the legacies of individuals that they are creating across various sectors, with the goal of inspiring you, the listeners, by highlighting the power of community and others' stories. Let's get started. Well, I'm excited today to have my friend and mentor, Shane Reeves, State Senator Shane Reeves, with us on the podcast. Shane is, as I just mentioned, a state senator for the 14th District, the state of Tennessee, and also is the founder and CEO of 12 Stone Health Partners, which is based here in the state of Tennessee in Murfreesboro, which I guess you guys actually won't get into this. Mm-hmm. How many states are you in now? 5, 6?
4, about to be in 5.
4? Okay.
Right.
So seen a lot of growth since he started that back several years ago. But before we totally dive in, just for you guys, a quick kind of personal connection between Shane and I. I know if you've had a chance to listen to the intro episode, you've heard some of my story, and obviously Shane is part of that. But Shane and I first met back in 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in that range. You were actually the treasurer at the time for a guy named Jim Tracy, who was running for Congress.
Sure.
I was working for Jim, and remember you guys, I guess your kind of corporate Reeves Saint office was still in kind of that strip center
Sure.
behind the drugstore, and crashed your office often, working out of there as one of the first employees. And I think, Jim made a lot of phone calls
He
out
certainly
of that
did.
office. Probably made you and Rick a lot less productive for those few months until we finally found an office. But that's where Shane and I first met. I guess really kind of reconnected a few years later as Jim again. Obviously he lost that congressional race. Fast forward to 16, 17. Trump's been elected, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture has basically a state director for all 50 states, and Tracy was being considered for that, and so there was a lot of discussion about special election, no special election, and that was kind of a fun time. And we had kind of reconnected at some point in 17, and at some point it kind of became imminent, like that it was going to happen after, not feeling like it was going to. And I remember I was actually driving to Brentwood one morning from Hendersonville, where we were living at the time, in 17, and Shane said, "Won't you come run my campaign?" Which was music to my wife's ears, who was from Murfreesboro. Mm-hmm. So she was very excited about that, especially at that point, since we were had our first kid. He was, I guess 7-8 months old at that time. So I've just really grown to admire you and appreciate you. You've been a cheerleader for me and really my family as we've grown. Just have a tremendous respect for you and just love your family as well. And so thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm proud of you too. Love your family too. And I want to see you continue to be successful, and thrilled to hear about this podcast. And I hope it's all that you want it to be.
I appreciate it. That's good. Well, let's talk a little bit about legacy. Obviously, this is Legacy Builders. And so I love to ask all of our guests when they come on, what does that mean to you? What does the word legacy mean to you? And really, not just what does it mean for you, but how has the idea of legacy shaped how you approach your life and how you approach work?
Sure. So a few thoughts on that, and that is, I'm 56. Now, we're recording this in December of 24, and I'll be 57 in January. And, you look at legacy different in different seasons of your life. Mm-hmm. You really do. When I was your age, 20-something, 25 or so years ago, you care about legacy, but you're still in such a striving, grinding age when you're where you're at. But where I'm at right nowadays, legacy weighs on me more and more and more. something that has really occurred to me lately is this: right or wrong. So many times your legacy is you're remembered more for your final moments, more so than you even might be for your finest moments. So I guess the moral behind the story is finish strong.
Yeah.
You can blow up your entire life and blow up your entire legacy in your last 3, 4, 5 years if you're not careful. Right. So you better be consistent in how you're living all the way from beginning to end. So that's my first thing is because I've been CEO for 30 years, working for 30 years, been a state senator for 6 years, and I'm proud of where I am nowadays. But at any given time, if I choose to make a bunch of boneheaded decisions in the next 10 years, that'll become your legacy.
Sure.
And Matt, if you really think about it, the new Gladiator movie's out right now, and I love the original one. And one of the lines from the original Gladiator movie was whenever he was meeting with the king at the very beginning of it, and that king said, "I'm dying," and he told him, he said, "How will the world speak my name?" With the point being that at some point in time, when you're gone, how are people going to speak your name? Yeah. Your family, your friends, your enemies, your coworkers, people in politics. And I've about decided we leave 3 things behind. We leave behind our worldview and our values, how you choose to live, what your values are. That influence permeates to people in your proximity, your family, your kids, your neighbors. So your worldview is part of what you leave behind. The second thing is, and I believe this is, you kind of leave behind your wisdom. And to me, that's different than values and worldview, because wisdom are things like, my mother used to say, kill them with kindness, Shane. Or my dad would tell me, son, when things are going tough, you got to learn to bite the bullet. It's just that wisdom, you leave that behind. Then the third thing you leave behind is your stuff.
Sure.
And I'm sure everybody knows this out there. None of us get out of this thing alive. And
not taking it with you.
None get out of this thing alive. But you leave behind all your stuff, and everything you have in the whole entire world is either going to be stored or sold or given away along the way. And so it's all it's your stuff. But at the end of our lives and our funerals, nobody celebrates your stuff.
Sure.
They celebrate your generosity. Mm-hmm. They celebrate your service. They celebrate your heart, your goodness, your kindness. Yeah. So your legacy is built a lot around the things you leave behind that are not tangible. They really are. Yeah. But I'm thinking about it more than I used to. Mm-hmm. I really do. It's been a good ride.
I like those 3 things. Those are good. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of your early life, early career, just getting out of, you went to pharmacy school. So talk a little bit about where it all started. How did you get to being founder and CEO of 12 Stone Health Partners and the state senator? Because I think on the political side, and I think oftentimes a lot of people, think, because I've been asked, like, how in the world did you ever get to work in the governor's office? And the fact of the matter is, like, and this, like, I truly never sat back and said, I really want to work in the governor's office, and charted out a path to do it. Because there's a lot of different ways that could happen. And there's some luck and chance, and the good Lord has a big hand in it, obviously, too. So anyways, just share a little bit about your early career life.
So this could be an incredibly long answer if you want me to talk about how I got to CEO of 12 Stone. But maybe just give a couple of high points, and then we can dig into that a bit more if we need to. Again, Matt, I know you know this, and I don't know how many of your listeners know this, but my family has incredibly deep roots here in Rutherford County. 7 generations. Great-great-great-grandfather moved here in 1780. So, I'm a 7th generation Reeves. My kids are 8th generation Reeveses. So, super deep roots. Went to high school here in town, Oakland High School. Went to Middle Tennessee Christian School when I was elementary school. Oakland High School. Went to MTSU undergrad, and decided I want to go to pharmacy school. So I went to the University of Tennessee College of Pharmacy in 1990, and my dad was a pharmacist. And so his dad was a pharmacist and his dad was a pharmacist. So the Reeveses have been practicing pharmacy in this community since around 1900. So deep roots in pharmacy. But at the time, it's like my brain just wasn't turned on in my early 20s. And then just one day I'm like, why don't I just go to pharmacy school? It just makes a lot of sense. And so I decided to go to pharmacy school, graduated pharmacy school in 1994. Knew a lot about pharmacy, but that was about it. I mean, I knew nothing about business. I mean, I remember sitting in front of banks, and banks would be talking about cash flow statements and P&L statements. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I'd be sitting with attorneys and talking about C corps and S corps and LLCs and
holding companies.
I did, and all those pieces and what structures are going to use. And so I didn't have an MBA. I was a pharmacist, but I was buying into a family pharmacy business. So I started reading a lot and been getting better. And I had a business partner, Rick Sane. Be a good person to have on your show somewhere along the way. Had Rick on my Rick and I were business partners for 20 years, and I could do an entire podcast with Rick just on Reeves Sane. We went through so much over all those years together. You know, incredible highs, incredible lows. Made some money, lost some money. Had some good ideas, had some bonehead ideas. Hired some rock stars, hired some losers. I mean, it's just kind of the process. But there is no better classroom of life than owning your own business.
Sure. Yeah.
Anybody out there, if you want to grow immensely in your life, go start a business. Go start a business.
It'll challenge
It
you
is.
quickly.
There's nothing like that'll grow you like trying to own your own business. But Rick and I were partners for 20-something years. We had a fairly large liquidity event in 2015. And again, I could talk a lot about Reeves Sane, but I'm trying to get to 12 Stone. Had a big liquidity event in 2015, and I started 12 Stone in 2016. And we may get into some of this today, Matt, but 2016 was the hardest year professionally I've ever had, hands down, in my whole life. I was mid-40s, and it was just one of those seasons of my life that was incredibly painful. Anything could go wrong that year went wrong. I had all kinds of cash issues and business issues and employee issues and customer issues and just so many problems. And we can dig more into how I responded to all that through then. But kind of pulled out of it in 2017, 18. We kind of found our stride in 18, which is to become this infusion company, IB company. And I really pivoted away from being a pharmacist a number of years ago. You don't want me being a pharmacist anymore. And I've really settled into being a CEO, and I try to focus on the things that only I can do for the company. You know, there's a few things as a CEO that Shane Reeves needs to do. I need to play a role in business development and growth. I need to play a role in strategy and vision. I've got to play a role somewhat in culture and organizational health inside my business.
Right.
And in recent years, I've tried to play a role in public policy. As long as I stay in my lane and do those four things, and I don't break things, then the company's successful. But there's a whole lot that got to this point, which I could talk all day long about. I could talk all day long just about that one question. Yeah. But maybe we'll get back around to it.
Well, talk a little bit about those later years of Reeves Sane and how you obviously you were bought, and so, what was that transition like? Because I'm assuming you didn't just necessarily say, "Oh, I'm going to start 12 Stone." Yeah. So what was kind of that transition period like for you, and at what point was it I want to do 12 Stone, and why didn't you use Reeves? Which I know the answer to that, but obviously because of what you just said, the Reeves family's been around Murfreesboro, Middle Tennessee since 1900.
Sure.
So it's a really strong name, obviously. And you go start a new company and you don't use the word Reeves, which, I know the answer to that.
Sure.
But some people may still even wonder why not.
I would say nobody knows that, to be honest.
Reeves Healthstone Partners.
That's right. Well, Rick was always a few years older than me.
Yeah.
And he has two sons. One son that was out of the house and one son that was still at home. That has a a few special needs that he and Amy take care of. And probably in 2011, 2012, Rick and I both were looking to exit the company in at least components of the company and take some chips off the table. In 2012, we had our hands in a lot of things. We had Reeves Saint drugstores, which everybody knows, the milkshakes. We also had a medical equipment company. We had an infusion company. We had an enteral business. We had a long-term care pharmacy business. We had a lot going on in 2012. And it was busy times, but the company was very fragmented and really didn't have a lot of vision because it was going in so many different directions. So a friend of ours approached us in 2012 and came to us and said, Rick, have you and Shane, have you and Rick ever considered starting a specialty pharmacy? And Rick and I said, the last thing on earth we need is another business. We got our hands in so much. And this friend of ours said, well, a specialty pharmacy is a pharmacy that just focuses on medications, expensive medications for patients with chronic, complex, and rare diseases. And we said, well, we don't have the time to run it, but I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give you a little back room in the back of our drugstore. If you want to go back there and run it, knock yourself out. You can use our pharmacy. You can use our computer systems. You can use our HR. So I think it was March of 2012, this friend of ours, who was a pharmacist, came in and opened up this little specialty pharmacy business under the umbrella of Reeves Saint Drugstore. Unbeknownst to Rick and I, the drug that we started selling was a drug for hepatitis, which is basically, hepatitis is your liver. The drug was $30,000 a month. $30,000 a month. And you take it for 3 months. So it's $90,000, but it cures hepatitis. Wow. Cures it. So $90,000 a month is still cheaper than getting a new liver for $1 million. So that was the first drug that we started selling in early March 2012. And by the time we got to Christmas of that year, we probably had 30 or 40 patients. Time we got to the Christmas of 2013, we had 400 or 500 patients at $30,000 a month. Now, we're not keeping all that money. Everybody listen, we're not keeping all that money. But we kept a percentage of that.
Sure.
And that really became the company, which we called Entrust, which really became the impetus saying, this is probably the organization that I think we could sell and give us opportunity to cash in, do some different things. So we went through that process. What we did not know, what we didn't think about at the time was, since we opened that little pharmacy, specialty pharmacy, in the back shop, the back room of Reeves Saint Drugstore, we couldn't pull it out without huge taxation. If we pulled it out, we had to pay taxes once, sold it, pay taxes twice. So we had to find somebody to buy Reeves Saint Drugstore, the little family business here in town. And if they bought Reeves Saint Drugstore, they could have the big specialty behemoth pharmacy company at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
Been in family pharmacy for a long, long time. We're going to sell Reeves Saint Drugstore with the great milkshakes and all the stuff we do. But we didn't want to sell it to Walgreens or to CVS or to Kroger or one of these companies, because we thought if we did, day one, they would take the specialty pharmacy business and they would transfer all the files to their store and they close the store down. So we started looking for someone who might buy it that would leave the retail drugstore alone. So Rick and I sold it to Fred's in March of 2015. And when that happened, Rick stayed with Fred's and I started over again. It was March 2015. Still had kids at home. I knew I still wanted to work. I've got 3 kids. And it was a time of a lot of prayer, a lot of reflection, looking for a lot of clarity. And the summer of 2015, I said, I want to keep doing this, but I think all I want to do is focus on people with chronic conditions. That's all I want to do. Let's look for those people with multiple sclerosis and Crohn's disease and Lou Gehrig's disease and cystic fibrosis. Just chronic conditions is all I want to do. And that was in the summer of 2015. Well, because my family's been in pharmacy forever, I said, well, I'll just call it some kind of Reeves Chronic Care Pharmacy. What I did not realize was that when I did the deal with Fred's put a 5-year non-compete on my name. They said, not only can you not put your name on pharmacy, you can't put your name on anything with the name Reeves for 5 years. I couldn't have Reeves tires. I couldn't have Reeves landscaping. I couldn't have Reeves coffee for 5 years. So it forced me to step back and say, okay, I got to come up with something brand new. So we chose 12 Stone. We can talk about 12 Stone specifically where
Yeah.
it came from if you want to, but so we chose the 12 Stone name in the summer of 15 and really launched it in January of 16.
So, and you kind of alluded to this because I mean, I just think it's a really cool story. I mean, obviously for you starting a business in this community again, you know, there was a tremendous amount of benefit to being able to use the Reeves name, but you had that taken away from you. And so, and you may sit back now and say, well, that was a tremendous blessing. Or you may say it wasn't. I don't know. But I guess I am curious how you look back on that now, you know, what, almost 10 years later. I mean, we'll be 10 years next year, I guess. But, and then talk a little bit about how you ended up coming up with the name, because, you know, I mean, I think there was a lot of intentionality behind it. And that also then gets us into, you know, really the foundation and the DNA of 12 Stone and how you lead, how you serve patients and families. And so talk a little bit about that, if you would.
All right, so there's a few questions kind of tucked into that. The 12 Stone name, at the time when I first launched it in 16, I mean, everybody would come up to me and say, "What is this stone thing you're doing, man?" I mean, it was really challenging early on because it was very local.
Yeah.
Gave me the chance to talk about the 12 Stone story, which I'll mention in a minute. But as the company has expanded, we have 21 locations in 4 states. We're going to build 10 more next year. We'll have 30 locations, maybe in 5 to 6 states. People don't know Reeves in Kentucky, or Virginia, or Georgia, or Mississippi. But early on, it was a big deal,
right?
And at least in my back door, there's a lot of brand confusion.
Yeah,
it impacted customers. It impacted vendors we did business with, referral sources. Like, what's a 12 Stone?
Yeah.
So it was hard early on, but it's clearly ended up being a blessing.
Because you've been able, because it didn't matter in those other states,
but also because the 12 Stone story
Sure.
has given me the chance to tell the story I'm about to tell you, which I've told to hundreds and hundreds of people, which is the 12 Stone story is pulled from an Old Testament story. And I've told this right here, whether I'm speaking to a group of 1,000 people, or whether I'm speaking to a handful of investors, whether I'm speaking to some new patients, or I'm doing new employee orientation. 12 Stone story is pulled from an Old Testament story by the guy by the name of Joshua. And Joshua took over from Moses. And when he took over from Moses, you know, there's different accounts, but they believe he might have had as many as 2 million people. He's leading across the deserts of Israel. 2 million people. You know, put that in perspective. Neyland Stadium owes 100,000. That's 20 of those, okay? Across the deserts. And they're trying to get to the promised land. They come to the Jordan River. The Jordan River is at flood stage. And the story goes that Joshua went and they held up the Ark of the Covenant. And they put their feet in the water, and the water stood up on both sides. And millions of Israelites crossed over to the other side. And to celebrate that successful crossing on the other side, they stacked 12 stones to reflect the 12 tribes of Israel as they got to the promised land. So we at 12 Stone want to be the company that gets in the deep, deep part of the river. And we help the sickest of the sickest people with chronic conditions in Tennessee, Georgia, Virginia, Kentucky to get across their own rivers.
Yeah.
You know, to get to better places of healing and hope and peace, to get to their own promised lands.
Yeah.
You know, we give every patient a stone. Every single new patient of ours has a stone. And I'll run into people everywhere and say, you know, my mom has had Alzheimer's for the last number of years, but she keeps this stone with her because it just kind of reminds people sometime of the promises of God to help them get across the river. Yeah. So that story has become a big deal. Yeah. And it's given me the opportunity to kind of, talk a bit about my faith, things that are important to me, which Reeves Chronic Care Pharmacy never would have, you know. So that's what it is.
That's good. So, you know, that's kind of the foundation of 12 Stone, and then you've already kind of alluded to, you know, the 2016, the difficult year that was, but how that you really kind of started to gain momentum 17, 18, and just beyond that. So talk a little bit about the wrench that was thrown into this as you're kind of ramping this thing up, and Jim decides he's going to take this Trump appointment. So how did the I guess maybe back up. Let's back up a little bit. Where did your interest in public office even begin or come from? I mean, you know, so give folks kind of an insight to a little bit of that background with your family or your dad and just your interest in public service, because during your time as CEO and running Reeves Sane with Rick, you were very active in the community, on and off different boards and commissions and nonprofits. And so talk just a little bit about, the community involvement and just like your interest in the public policy.
So when I was 12 years old, my dad ran for city council. It was 1980. And I remember as a young boy, Murfreesboro is a very different place in 1980, by the way. I mean, than it is nowadays. I mean, significantly different place than it is nowadays. But I remember going door to door with my dad in these little door hangers. I remember my dad, he at the City Cafe in downtown Murfreesboro, he reached out to all his buddies and church folks and said, okay, we're going to put signs up today. So he had probably 40 people all come to the City Cafe. He had a big country ham breakfast. Then he handed everybody, it was my dad, a very organized list and said, okay, here's 20 signs for you, 20 signs for you, 20 signs for you. And people went out. It was a big sign placing day. We put out 300 or 400 signs. And so I got my early love for public service from my dad.
Yeah,
I just did. And it didn't take long to kind of recognize the difference you can make in people's lives. Yeah. You really can make a difference in public service. So, I was in high school, went away to pharmacy school. My dad continued to stay in vice mayor. Well, the city council, became vice mayor of Murfreesboro. My dad ended up serving about 22 years in the city council, ultimately being mayor.
Right.
For a term here in Murfreesboro. But I really got exposed to it first then. If you would have grabbed the 26-year-old Shane when I graduated pharmacy school and said, "Do you want to run for office?" I'd have said, "Absolutely. Somewhere down the road, I want to go." I was very Matt Herriman, man. I was going to go. And but if you'd asked me what I wanted to run from back then, I would have wanted to go to Congress. I really wanted to be a U.S. House member back then. That was kind of where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. But I was 26, just got out of school, had no money, didn't have a family, didn't know anything that was going on. So what I decided to do was throw my life into the community. Yeah. Some of the best advice that was given to me, and I give to anybody nowadays that wants to run for office, anybody nowadays is, the best thing you can do is to make your way in the private sector first. There's so much value in making your way in the private sector first. Get involved in your church, get involved in the chamber, get involved in the Rotary Club, get involved in some other campaigns. Mm-hmm. Learn your community. Yeah. Not only will you be better in the public service role, but you'll have a better sense of what you need to focus on. I just think it's a mistake for people to jump in and not have done some of that. Yeah. So I took that same advice. Somebody gave it to me, and I did. And for a number of years, I did just that. And I was involved with everything, Matt, everything. There was a season I think I was on like 10 boards. Yeah. And I was on so much, church boards, political boards. I had children along the way. My business was growing. But when I turned 40, I think I've told you this. Not many people know this out there, so this is breaking news. When I turned 40, Bart Gordon, our local congressman here in town, decided to retire. Mm-hmm. And he called me about a week before he retired, just because our family had been friends for a number of years, and said, Shane's Bart Gordon, and I want to let you know I'm going to be retiring next week. The county's kind of turned Republican, and I don't think I'm going to win in the future. But I've known for a long time it's just something that you wanted to do, and I just wanted to kind of give you a little heads up for a week and to think about if that's something you want to do, because I'd love to have somebody from Murfreesboro and Rutherford County continue to represent us in Washington. So that was a big day, man. Mm-hmm. I had 3 young kids at home, had a young business. I went home and told my wife, and she started crying, like, well, this is it. We're going to Washington. And I told my business partner about it, Rick Sane at the time, and he said, well, what are we going to do? I mean, we got this business. And I thought, we'll figure it all out. And then I went and talked to my dad, and my dad said, have you lost your mind? He said, you got 3 kids at home under the age of 10. You got a business that's just starting to turn the corner. And he said, he says, dig in for another decade. There'll always be other windows in politics. And there are.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that, everybody, if you're thinking about running for office, but there always are other windows of opportunity. There'll always be another office, another opportunity that opens up. And
for some context, this was what, 2010, 2009?
When I was turning 40.
I guess it was somewhere in the 10, 9, 10.
Yeah, but that would have been
That. So that was, I guess, for perspective, that was
2008.
about 5 years before you ended up selling.
That's it. It was about 2008. About 2008 when I turned 40 when I got the phone call. And it was about 6 or 7 years after that, 5 or 6, when we started this new company. And then I ultimately sold the business in 2015. So I was 46, 47 when I sold the business. Never run for office before in my life. I'd been involved in lots and lots of campaigns. And again, if anybody's watching this and you ever want to run for office again, if you want to run for office at all, get involved in campaigns. Mm-hmm. Local campaigns, city, county, state, federal. You'll learn so much to make sure it's something you want to do.
Yeah.
So to Matt's point a minute ago, I'd started 12 Stone. 2016 was a terrible year. But to God used that year in a lot of ways for me, and that ended up being a blessing as well. But in 2017, as you said, Jim Tracy took the job with the USDA, and he came to see me in the fall of 2017 and said, well, Shane, I'm thinking about taking this job with the Trump administration, and well, I don't know, I've kind of been tagged to come in here and talk to you about this if we can't recruit. And I'm like, well, Jim, I've got this business and I've got this family and all these things going on, and I'm just not sure it's something I want to do right now. By then, keep in mind, I was in my late 40s. And I said, well, how much time do I have to make a decision? He goes, you got 3 days. So I went to the same people I went to last time. I went to my wife. My wife said, you know what? I think the time's right. Kids are older. You're at a better place. I went and talked. I didn't have a business partner, but I talked to my investors, people I work with at 12 Stone. And they said, well, we think it's actually an outstanding idea. You know, at this point in time nowadays, we'd feel like there's a lot of value just from public policy and from networking and just overall brand awareness for you to be more active in the public. And then I went and talked to my dad again, and he said, game on. And so I decided to jump into office. And I know I've told you this before, but there was about 3 things I prayed before I said yes on this. One is I need a campaign manager, and you said yes. The second thing is I needed a really good, strong treasurer. Ted Beatty said yes.
Yep.
And I said, and number 3, I really need some, I really need just the overall campaign to become clear. And I need people to quickly kind of rally around, kind of give me an idea of what it looks like. So I quickly built together a kitchen cabinet, and it came together. So it felt right. Not any fun. Running for office, not running for office, not any fun. You know, some people love running for office, and I mean, it's part of it. But I mean, I love serving more than I do running.
Yeah,
I think most people probably do.
So Jim gets appointed. Yep. There's a special election that kicks off this campaign for state senate, and I
did one a primary, then one a general. One a general in March of 2018.
You got to campaign during Christmas and New Year's.
I did. You know, one thing that not many people know either, when I tell them this is interesting. So in the general race in March of 2018, I was losing. Keep in mind, it's a special election. So I'm the only thing on the ballot. It's me. Yep. And I was losing, and early on, because the Republicans just weren't getting out to vote. And the lady I was running with at the time, she had an organization she actually ran, which was an organization that promoted atheism. It really was. She does just, I think it was called Reforming Religion. And because of that, as word got out that this lady was running, especially being here in the Bible Belt, there would be people that would walk into the voting booth and say, I don't know who this lady is, and I don't know who this Reeves guy is, but I want to vote for him. I'll tell you when I knew we were going to win, though, is about 3 or 4 days prior to the actual election night, my wife came running into the other room. She's like, oh my goodness gracious. She held her phone up. She goes, Franklin Graham has just posted, if you live in Tennessee, there's a guy named Shane Reeves that's running against this individual. Please get out and vote. And I said, you got Franklin Graham posting? You got a good shot. You got a good shot. That was a highlight, but that was a fun night. That was a fun night. It's been a blessing.
So that was a special election. You had to turn around and run again. What in 2020? Because
20.
Jim was middle of his term.
That's
State Senate term is 4 years, so he had already served basically 2 years. So you served.
Right.
You were elected to serve the remainder
That's
of
right.
his
That's
term.
exactly right.
So you had to run again in 20, and then you just ran again this cycle.
20 was the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing about running for office in the middle of COVID is nobody wants you to get out and do anything. You truly can campaign from your basement. You really can. I mean, nobody wants you to do anything. So that election was incredible because, you could kind of run a mail campaign or a digital campaign.
Yeah.
You weren't required to go to every single fish fry and all the places that push you so much during the campaign.
Well, because there weren't really any fish fries,
No.
and you certainly weren't showing up at somebody's door to ask them to vote
There
for
was
you.
no knocking on the doors. There were no
yeah.
events. And so you really just kind of running from the top down. And so the election wasn't too tough. And then I just got elected here in November of this last year. So this will be 6 years. I'm in 6 years at this point.
So talk a little bit about, I know we started this out talking about legacy. So when you are approaching, public policy and just your thought process, how does we've talked about this a little bit, but how does your faith, how does your value system, how does that inform your decisions from a public policy standpoint? Just kind of give us an idea of what that thought process is for
Sure.
you.
Well, one thing about it, I think when people get to talking about faith in politics or faith in government, everybody kind of gets all, get a little squeamish about it sometimes. But my take on it is everybody's going to put their faith in something, Matt.
Yeah.
My faith happens to be in Christ. I'm a Christian. Some people put their faith in a religion. Some people put their faith in their family. Some people put their faith in power or in money. Some people put their faith in the Tennessee Titans. Probably not this year. No. But everybody gets their faith from something. So every single person who is working in Murfreesboro or in Rutherford County or in the General Assembly in Nashville or in Washington, they're all got some kind of worldview that's shaped by their faith. Everybody comes to the job with something.
Yeah.
So whether they admit it or not, their faith and their worldview is shaping how they vote. Mm-hmm. So it's the same for me. When I approach issues, the faith is absolutely the first filter it's got to get through because there's life after politics.
Right.
And I certainly don't want to look up down the road and have voted for some things I felt were inconsistent with my faith.
Yeah.
And be ashamed of it. So the faith is a big filter early on. Then beyond the faith, which I kind of put faith and family almost there together just because it fits so tight. I don't want to do anything that I feel like is contrary to my faith or my family. The next big filter I typically try to run things through are, is it something I know something about? Mm-hmm. I try to stay in my lane.
Yeah.
I'm a business guy. I'm in healthcare. I'm a pharmacist. I'm fairly equipped to be able to weigh in on those issues and know what I'm talking about. I'm not shooting from the hip. Been doing it for 30 years. I feel very, very equipped to be able to talk about those issues and make good decisions for patients, for providers, and for payers, and in business in general, just ensuring businesses are successful and they're able to thrive in Tennessee. So those two things are real important to me. Is it consistent with my values, and do I know what I'm talking about in those two areas?
Yeah.
Then beyond that, I don't have anything else real sophisticated.
Yeah.
I really don't. I just try to stay in my lane. When you first get elected to anything, it doesn't take long for you to quickly kind of be boxed in who you're going to be as a candidate. If the very, very first thing when I got elected in Nashville, if I'd have gone down there and it was all about, immigration, if that's all I wanted to talk about, I do care about it.
Yeah.
But if I quickly make it, that's the only thing I want to talk about. Well, that becomes your
identity as a senator.
Absolutely does.
Yeah.
So I chose to really reflect on that and say, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? And, my faith was part of it to the point that I ran for chaplain. I've been the chaplain of the Senate now for 6 years.
Yeah.
And that's important to me to have some kind of, which basically means I get the chance to pray in the chambers. I get to pray for members. It just gives me a chance to share my faith in a very subtle, thoughtful way.
So once you got elected, obviously you talked a little bit about this. So you'd kind of been around the political world, really in a lot of ways your whole life,
Right.
with your dad. But once you got elected and it was real, like you were going to go to Nashville and you were going to get sworn in and you were going to be able to file legislation and vote and have influence. Was there anyone or anything necessarily? What was kind of the best advice you were given as you entered into that role that you still look back and maybe even as each session comes along think back on?
So I'll tell you the advice that was given to me, and it's the exact same advice that I give to brand new senators. We have 3 new senators coming in this time, and I've met with all 3 of them, and I told all 3 of them the same thing.
Yeah.
Number one, you need to spend a lot of time in this first session getting to know people and listening a lot. There's no reason to come down here and act like you know everything, because I'm telling you don't. Listen a lot, make friends, to build some relationships is the first thing that you need to do. Second piece of advice is consistent with what I just said a minute ago, is really decide what you want to focus on. I mean, there are 9 Senate committees, and you cannot be an expert on everything. You can't know everything about transportation, judiciary, education, and healthcare. You just can't. I mean, you can have a generalist perspective, but really decide what you want to focus on and let that be your part. And the third thing is, you better hire a rock star executive assistant
Yeah.
in Nashville to be able to help you, because we are so dependent on that. And I've hired Hannah is in my office in Nashville, and she has just been fabulous to keep me out of the ditch on things. So, that's something that I tell everybody. But I'll also say this: it's not what anybody thinks it is. Everybody always has this perspective of what it is to be a senator, and there are perks and there are things you enjoy about it, but there are aspects of it too, from a scheduling perspective, from a pace perspective. When you're in Nashville, man, it's hair on fire, and it is wide open.
So define hair on fire for people who haven't experienced that.
So I was just
what is a typical? Give people an idea. Once, I know January tends to be a little bit slow, but once you hit February, what does that look like when the legislative session is in? What's a normal Tuesday
it's
look like for you?
and this is hard for people to believe, but it's almost like you need to come shadow me to get an appreciation for this. So Mondays we go to Nashville and we gavel in. Everybody gavels in at 4:00 on Mondays. We start a session for the week. You got to remember, there's 33 senators in Nashville. People are coming in from everywhere. So, I'm driving from Murfreesboro, but you've got people coming from Memphis and Kingsport that are driving here all day long. We gavel in at 4:00 on Monday. In the Senate chambers, we start the week. We normally have receptions on Monday night. So in a busy time of year, it's commonplace to have 5 receptions on Monday nights. We don't have a reception. We have 5 to go to. You go to the bankers, then you go to the librarians, and you sit over here, and you go to the forestry commission, then you come back around to the firefighters. That's just in one night. We roll into Tuesday mornings, and starting early on Tuesday mornings, you start having meetings in your office. And those meetings are constituents. Those are lobbyists. Sometimes those are other members in Nashville that will want to meet with you. And a lot of your meetings are tied to your committees. Mm-hmm. So I'm on 3 committees. I'm on the healthcare committee, I'm on the business and on the commerce committee, and I'm on ag. I'm also on ag because I have a decent amount of ag in my district. So the meetings start on Tuesday morning up until my first committee meeting, which is sometimes around 1:00. Matt, and I think you know this because you've been down there, but it's commonplace to have 20 meetings before lunch.
Yeah.
20. Every 15 minutes. And you're just going. You go from 9:00 to 9:15, 9:15 to 9:30, 9:30 to 9:45, 9:45 to 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock to 10:15. It's over and over and over and over again. You'll have 20. It's common. Almost always you'll have 15. Then you go have a committee meeting at 1:00, and you come back and you'll have another 15 meetings after that on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays, if I could show you my schedule, it's just the time I have. The day I have on Tuesday, the number of meetings there with my committee meetings, have a comparable day like that on Wednesdays during the really, really hair on fire time of sessions. It's easy to have 40 meetings a week.
Yeah.
Which is insanity.
How in the world, how do you digest all of that?
Sure.
Because, I'm sure, having been up there, there's probably people that are meeting with you that, you really probably can't help. You know, they may be asking about a bill that's not going to go anywhere, or they may be asking about something that's kind of out of your jurisdiction. So, but out of 40 meetings, there's probably 20 or 30 of those that that may require some sort of actionable item. So how in the world do you even manage
and keep in
all
mind, it's not 40 every week, but it starts probably at 15, 20, 25. At its peak, it's 40. But even toward the end, you're still having 20 a week. I mean, it never slows down. First and most importantly is you've got to prioritize who you're meeting with. And Hannah knows my top priority are the people from the district that are coming to meet me.
Right.
So if you're a farmer and you're coming from Bedford County, you're getting in.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting in to see me. If they call the office and say, "Hey, Shane, this is so-and-so, I'm a banker in Cannon County." Yes, sir. We got you in here. So you have to prioritize that first. Then the second group that gets in to see me would be people that want to talk to me specifically about bills that are on the calendar, they're in the committee for that day. Yeah. There's no point in coming in and talking to me about some education. I'm not on education, about some education bill that I'm not going to hear for a month till it's on the floor.
Sure.
I'm not going to remember it. So, but let's talk about what's on the calendar on that committee for that day. That's the second thing. And the third thing is you always kind of have to work in days on the Hill. People are always down there with days on the Hill, even if they're not from your district, to make it all work. So I think the first thing you have to do is prioritize who you're giving energy and time to. How do I keep up with all of it? Hannah sits in there with me, takes a lot of notes, but I developed a system. I have a little sheet, this form I've created, which kind of is my bill review sheet, and I take notes on it. What's the House bill number? What's the Senate bill number? Who's bringing it to me? The pros and cons. And every time somebody else comes in to talk to me about that, she'll pull that same sheet out. So I've got the last meetings. So by the time I actually get ready to look at this bill, I might have had 5 different groups to come see me on this bill, and I've got all their notes on here. Yeah. So I can kind of decide. And at the very bottom, I have a yes or no. I ultimately circle what I want to do, and that's where I go. Yeah. And I run it through those same filters. But you got to have systems. How you manage your time, how you manage your mind, how you manage your processes. I mean, it's essential, or you drown.
Yeah. To kind of give people an idea, you alluded to days on the Hill, which if people have never been to Nashville, they may have no idea what you're talking about.
Sure.
But it's kind of a cool thing because what he's referencing is there's a Farm Bureau Day on the Hill. Sure. And so you'll have all the kind of county farm bureaus from across the state show up. There's a it's not in your district anymore, but there's a Lincoln County Hamburger Day on the Hill Day.
That's it.
But you also there's an Ag Day on the Hill, and I know the Realtors Association always does a day on the Hill, but there's all these kind of trade associations and even civic organizations do days on the Hill, and really what a lot of those groups use it for is for advocacy. There's more than likely, a handful of bills that the Farm Bureau cares about or that the realtors care about, and so they use that day to really kind of, they'll set it. Most of them probably already have it set. They do. And rooms scheduled for probably February, March, so that they're hitting you guys at the right time.
It's on my calendar right now.
That's right.
I'll show it to you.
Yeah, so they
bankers have already got a day. They're already on the Hill.
They want to come and talk to you about the impact fee stuff. That's and what's affecting farmers, and it's a really great way, honestly, to get back to being involved. Get involved in a civic organization locally. Get involved in a trade association locally. If you're like, for me, obviously I'm also a realtor, so because of that, I'm part of the Realtors Association, and so I've tried to be active in what they are advocating for locally and at the state level, and even to some degree nationally. But I think that's really a great way for you to get plugged in the political space, and then go to those days on the Hill and attend them and kind of really get a sense for how the sausage is made, so to speak. What does it look like to pass a bill?
Right. So as you can imagine, in my senator role, I get asked to speak to a lot of groups, and without question, almost every group I speak to, they'll always say, "So what recommendations would you give to the people here tonight to how to best connect with their senator?" Yeah, which is basically, how do you advocate? Mm-hmm. And there's like 5 things I always tell them, but one of them is always, if there's a day on the Hill, go. Yeah, you should. Yep, it's a day on the Hill, you should go, because If you don't know your senator, their first and their last name, then they don't know you either.
Right.
So when you have some issue that's a really, really big deal and you call up and you say, hello, my name is Jane Smith I live in such and such, that doesn't matter nearly as much as Jane Smith, who knows you, who's been by to see you, who's built a relationship with you, who goes to church with you. It makes a world of difference. And the days on the Hill are a great time. Yes, there's lots of meetings, but I welcome people the days on the Hill, especially if they're from my district that come in and say, so good to see you. So you need to go. It's a lot of fun.
That's good. Well, let's kind of wrap this up. I think one of the things I want to do is kind of just give us, you've experienced a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and one of the things that I think I've reflected on a lot over the past several years, but more so even recently, is I think a lot of times in our society there's people that look at a Shane Reeves or insert other successful business person,
Sure.
and the human reaction is jealousy and some envy of like, man, I really want that, and just see the success. And a lot of times they're not seeing the 2016s that Shane had. And so, talk a little bit about, and it may be that you've already kind of touched on some of this, I'm sure, but in those really low lows, what gave you the strength to keep pushing on? And then from that, I guess kind of a two-part, in the low lows, kind of where did you look for advice and strength and guidance as you went through those things? And then as Shane Reeves, the CEO, what's some advice that you would give either aspiring entrepreneurs or those wanting to be in a leadership role? What advice would you give them as they're kind of seeking that out?
Sure. So make sure I cover all that in this answer.
Yeah.
First thing is this. I think when I was in my mid-20s, maybe in my early 30s, you kind of look at life and you feel like you have these seasons when you're on the mountain, and then you have seasons when you're in the valley.
Yeah.
You have seasons when everything's just going great, and then seasons when things are really going challenging. I think at my age now, I realize it really is not like that. It's really more like a train track. And at any given time, you always have got some good things going on, and you've always got some challenging things going on.
I love that.
It's always going on simultaneously. Your marriage might be outstanding, but you might be having kind of a tough week health-wise. You just feel lousy. Yeah. You might be making a lot of money at work, but your walk with God might be kind of dry. Yeah. So it's really more of a trying to keep tension in both those areas, because you never really get on the high and everything. Yeah. You've always got something in the ditch. It's just part of it. You're going to have something down there. So I think it's a perspective for one part of it. And as I've gotten older, and have had my share of challenges, and for anybody that's out there that thinks Shane Reeves has got it all figured out, I don't have it all figured out. Mm-hmm. I've had plenty of challenges in my life professionally. My wife and I have a couple of sons, both who had some serious physical health issues early on when they were born. I've had my ups and downs financially, ups and downs spiritually. I mean, I've had a lot of them, but I'm a better man for them. Yeah. And I've mentioned 2016 a few times, and I could probably share some specific other times as well. But since that's a little more timely, let me talk about that for just a minute. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, I formed 12 Stone in 2016, and it was a challenging time because it was a new company. And Matt, the wheels just came off, man. The wheels just came off my life that year. Business-wise, financially, I was getting pressures from the bank. I had employees that had been with me for years. They either quit. I had one employee been with me for years that had like a serious health crisis that had to go out. I had customers for years that left. I had theft issues. I just had so much going on during that season of my life. And it was a brand new company, and I cannot tell you, it was a time of my life where I don't know about you or about people that are listening to this, but God wants to talk to me at 3:00 in the morning, usually. And I would wake up at about 3 in the morning and just be wide awake. And with my wheels spinning, and I would have reflux. real bad reflux.
Yeah.
And so I would keep milk in the refrigerator in the kitchen. Again, man, this is only like 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And I would go and I'd drink that milk and I'd sit in the living room and try to be quiet and pray about things to get to feeling better. But this was a season of my life where every single week, if not every single day, I would come in and like, what shoe's going to fall today? I mean, what issue's going to happen today? It's like every single day, man, I was getting hit with something. And to the point that I was saying, God, we don't have to do this. let's send me a
Where's the
buyer.
eject button?
Send me a buyer, man. Let's close this thing down. It's just not worth all this. But then I had a older friend mentor of mine come along beside me in April of that year. I've been going about 4 months, and I was beat up. And he sat down with me, and he said, Shane, don't miss this painful gift. And I said, okay. He said, this is not going to last forever. He said, I know it feels like it is, but it's not going to last forever. Don't miss this painful gift. He said, I want you to go to Barnes & Nobles, and I want you to pick up 2 things. I'd always been a person that kind of gets up in the morning and have quiet time. He says, but I want you to go and get yourself a brand new journal. I've never been much of a journaler. A little bit along the way, I would journal some on and off, but get yourself a brand new journal, and I want you to get yourself a brand new daily Bible. So it has the day on there, it's December 21st, 22nd, 23rd daily Bible. And he says, tomorrow morning, I want you to get up and I want you to read whatever scriptures in that daily Bible, which at that time it was May 1st, 2016. I remember it. Mm-hmm. And I want you to read that section. Again, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I've always woke up in the mornings. And then in your journal, all I want you to do is to write down one word, just one word. And during that season of my life, I was in a bad place. Yeah. So sometimes those words were sad. It would be lonely. It would be discouraged. Occasionally the word would be hopeful. But just write one word every morning. And as you think through things and as you're quiet, write more in your journal on the way. What's going on? What's in your heart? And make it sense. This morning was day 2,811. It's changed my life.
Yeah.
It's changed my life. That morning discipline, which I've been doing all these years now, of just not just writing one word, but just taking the time in the morning to be quiet, read a little bit, pray a little bit, meditate and journal a little bit, and just try to be quiet. Shut off my monkey mind for a minute. Don't pick up the phone the first thing in the morning. Just put it aside for a few minutes and just try to be quiet and listen a little bit. And that's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
But it's changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's given me the ability to work through whatever's come my way. If it was the challenges at 12 Stone, if it's been the challenges of running for Senate, or it's just been the challenges of just trying to juggle life overall. But that one discipline has been significant, probably coupled with the morning time, also trying to get some exercise in, trying to fill my head full of good books. Mm-hmm. I always say if I can slay the 3-headed dragon of spiritual, physical, and mental time I go to work every day, and I'm ready to roll. I really am. But that has really given me the balance I need, the well I need to be able to pull from to get through tough times. That's good.
Well, as we wrap, one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about leadership, and we have talked a lot about leadership here today, and everybody approaches leadership in different ways, and they've learned from a place of leadership in different ways too, different lessons. I think one of the things for me that I, having been able to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit in your life over the past 5 years is the gratitude that you have for the people that helped you get to where you are. And so if you haven't had the chance to visit Shane at his office here in Murfreesboro at 12 Stone, I hope I'm okay to share this, but
sure.
I'm bragging on you because I think it's a cool thing, because I think there's a lot of people who don't really, because it's biblical to walk humbly, and so I think you really live that out. So in Shane's office, he's got when you walk in on the right side of that, really that whole wall is what he calls his wall of gratitude. Sure. And I mean, he's got tons of people, family, friends, pastors, mentors, business people, that really you credit to helping you be the man that you are today. And so I think there's a lot of, to me, if somebody doesn't know you and they walk in, they're obviously going to see this wall and ask you. And I'm sure people say, "What is this?" Because you don't have it written on their wall of gratitude, but it's a hodgepodge of people. So it's obvious it's not family. And so I think it's a great conversation starter in a lot of ways, but it also quickly tells people, that you're a humble guy, and that there's some people that may go years and years and years or ever without thinking and really paying tribute to the people that helped them get where they are. And I know for me, that's something that I've taken with me from you over the years, many things, but is to always appreciate and pay homage in some ways to the people that helped you get to where you are. Sure. I think that says a lot about you. So,
well, no accomplishment of any significance is done by yourself.
Yeah.
And Matt Herriman's on that wall too, by the way, since he brought it up here today. And I'm thankful for Matt for the season of life you invested in me.
Well, as final question here.
Yep.
We've talked a little bit about, you talked about it just now when you're with your morning routine, but I honestly, another thing that I really have taken from you, I wish I had taken the journaling thing. I did good for a few years and I've gotten off that track, but it is so valuable. But I don't know, it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago. It was the month of December. We were sitting down talking about, what I wanted to be doing in 5 years and this and that. We kind of laid down a roadmap, and you asked me how much I read. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd read 2 or 3 books that year. And so I started a book club as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And I've read a heck of a lot more. We've been on a hiatus, but we're starting it back next year. But, it's a little bit cliche, but I firmly believe that leaders are readers. Sure. And so, one of the things that we're going to ask everybody at the close of each show is, what are you reading or doing? Because you may be watching something that's edifying, not Netflix or whatever. But what are you reading or doing that's helping you grow personally or professionally?
That's good. And I tell you, the secret sauce: so many people don't read.
Yeah,
they just don't read. It just amazes me that I just don't think they know better. It's just that people just don't have an appreciation of the power of it, of putting things in your head. And you're a product of where you spend your time and your mind and your money. I mean, that's who you are.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot over the years, and I almost always kind of read based on, what's right in front of me.
Yeah.
So it's the end of the year right now when I'm doing this, and I've actually got, I got 2 or 3 things on my desk right now at home. One is a new book I've just picked up called The Lifestyle Investor. The guy's last name is Donald, but it is about generating more passive income in your life. You think about passive income when you're 57, more than so when you do when you're 27. But it's about generating more passive income in your life so that you ultimately get to the point. He's got a real unique approach on how to do more of that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Second thing I'm reading is a biography of James Madison, believe it or not. The reason I'm reading about James Madison is because Amanda and I, my wife is Amanda, we've got a tour. We're doing vacation this year. We're going to spend a little more time in Virginia, but everybody's been to Monticello. But I've never been to Montpelier, Madison's home. That's over in Charlottesville, Virginia, that same area. Yeah. And I've just been learning about that guy. And he was 5'4", weighed like 105 pounds. He was a genius. He was real quiet. But, the Constitution, so much of what's in the Constitution, it was in his head.
Yeah. The
3 branches of government, the Senate, House, the bicameral systems, the Bill of Rights, that's Madison.
Right.
So we're gonna spend some time go see his house. I'm reading a little bit about him right now. I'll lose my voice here in a minute, Matt. And I think the third thing that I'm really doing, I do this almost every year at this time. There is a book that I go through called The Best Year Ever, and I look at it almost every December. And it's a process I walk through the end of December, 1st of January, every single year to plan for the next year. So I'm going through that again right now. I go through it every year. It's just the same. It's a process I go through to really kind of think through what winning looks like in 2025. So that's what I'm looking to do in the next couple of weeks.
That's good. Well, again, thank you for your time.
Thank
you
you
for sharing,
Sure.
and hope you guys enjoyed this.
Yeah, been fun. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Legacy Builders with Matt Herriman. Be sure to go like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite platform, and we would just love it if you left us a 5-star review as well. We'll see you next time.